Good morning. Welcome to the webinar from the Visa Immigration Service Office and the Office of Global Affairs. As we're currently still seeing attendees joining us, I would like to briefly introduce some of the Zoom features to you before we officially start and have the presenters introduce themselves. So on the bottom, whether you are using a computer or an iPad or cell phone, you probably will be able to see on the bottom, there's the Q&A function. Feel free to ask us questions throughout the presentation as questions arise, and we will be answering your questions towards the end of the presentation. So for attendees who have registered with us and already pre-submitted your questions, some of your questions also will be answered throughout the presentation. One more note for our attendees, we just wanted to remind you, any personal related information, whether your ID number or your name or date of birth, those private information and to look at your individual cases might require an advisor to look into your immigration histories and your files a little more in depth. Your personal questions may not always be answered in the webinar today, but we will asking you to send an email to vis@stonybrook.edu with your ID numbers and your personal information, so the advisors can proper help you then. Okay. At this moment, I would like to introduce our Interim Vice Post for Global Affairs, Lindsey Walker, to say a few words.
Hi, everyone. It's so good to have so many of you guys connected. I would say good morning, good afternoon, good night, depending on where you are. But thank you so much for joining us. We know that the last 14 or so months have been extremely challenging for everyone, but uniquely so for our international population. And so we just want to thank you and commend you for the great work that you've done, the effort you've put into really maintaining your academics, staying connected to Stony Brook. We want you to know that we appreciate that. We recognize that there's been a lot of changes specifically in regards to immigration policies and procedures and guidelines, and some recent ones. And that's why we wanted to have this opportunity to go through this with you. I want to thank our team in Visa and Immigration Services and all of Global Affairs for the effort and work they've put in the last 14 months. And we just want to remind you that we are here for you. We don't have every answer. We don't know necessarily everything of how it will unfold, but certainly we are here for you. We want to answer your questions. We'll help you in any way that we can. So certainly continue to reach out to the team at Visa and Immigration Services. If you need anything, feel free to reach out to Meg Gambino, the director, myself, any of us. We're here for you. We are one Stony Brook community. And once again, thanks so much for your commitment and dedication to your academics, to Stony Brook, to giving your best. And hopefully, we will see you all in person again soon, be that fall or next spring or whenever that can happen. But thanks so much for tuning in. We think that today's session will be really useful for you. So we encourage you to pay close attention. And thanks again to our team at Visa and Immigration Services. And now I will pass it over to Meg Gambino, the director, who will walk through some of the new details and guidelines with you. Thanks so much, everyone.
Good morning. My name is Megan Gambino. I'm the Director of Visa and Immigration Services. And as you know, or may be aware, on Monday, April 26th, the Student and Exchange Visitor Program released policy guidance for F1 students regarding the fall 2021 and 2022 academic year. Also announced on the 26th, the Department of State expanded the national interest exception to F1 students from all countries subject to the current geographic COVID-19 entry ban, whose programs are to commence on or after August 1st. Based on the guidance provided, we'd like to share with you what it means for F1 students, both undergrad and grad, as Stony Brook University moves forward to fall 21. So for summer 21, if you started your program remotely from abroad, are returning from a leave of absence of more than 5 months, or were admitted for summer 21 and plan to come to the US for summer 1 or summer 2, then summer 21 is considered your first semester in F1 status, and therefore you're required to enroll as follows per this guidance. So if you're arriving for summer 1, which is a start date of May 24th on or about, full-time enrollment for summer 1 and summer 2 is required, and at least 3 credits must be in person or hybrid learning for each of these sessions. We say full-time enrollment is 6 credits, and that's for undergrads and those at the G1 or G3 level. If you're coming in at the G2, G4, or G5 level, then you would be required to enroll in at least 4.5 credits for summer 1 and summer 2. Those arriving for summer 2 are required to enroll full-time for summer 2 as well, and at least 3 credits of in-person or hybrid learning is required. For continuing students in F1 and F1 status, summer is an optional term unless it's required for your program, and therefore enrollment isn't necessarily required. Guidance for fall 21. So as I mentioned earlier, SEVP announced on Monday the 26th that the current COVID guidance issued in March 2020 will remain in place for the 21-22 academic year. So what this means for our new and initial students, and just to give you an idea of who is considered a new or initial student. These are our students who are admitted for fall 2021, or if you started your program remotely from abroad and are coming to the US for the first time in the fall, or are returning from a leave of absence of more than 5 months. Also included in this category would be those who are transferring from another US institution who were not enrolled on March 9th of 2020. So for our new initial students, if you wish to enroll fully online for fall 21, you would not be allowed to come to the US in F1 status. You may enroll full-time or part-time in online classes from abroad for the fall, and you would in turn need to request to defer your SEVIS record to spring 2022. New students in initial status who intend to come to the US for fall are required to enroll full-time, of which at least 3 credits must be in-person or hybrid learning. And we can recommend that you have a copy of your fall 2021 course schedule printed from Solar available to show at the port of entry and at your visa appointment if you have not yet secured a visa. Students transferring from a US institution who were engaged in full-time study in the US on March 9th may remain in F1 status as long as you continue to enroll full-time. This can include all online classes or a combination of online, in-person, or hybrid courses. There is no in-person requirement for students who are transferring from another US institution if you were enrolled full-time on March 9th. Students transferring from within the US who were not enrolled on March 9th of 2020 must enroll full-time, and one of their courses, at least one course, which must include at least 3 credits, must be full-time, in-person or hybrid. For our continuing active F1 students, so if you are currently in the US or you're an active student currently outside of the US but seeking to return to the US this fall, you must enroll full-time, and this can include all online classes or a combination of online, in-person, or hybrid courses. There is no in-person course requirement for continuing F1 students. Continuing F1 students who are outside and wish to remain outside of the US for the fall semester, your SEVIS record will remain active while you're abroad as long as you maintain full-time enrollment. The 5-month temporary absence provision will not apply for students who remain in active status. Students participating in our SBU Home Abroad program will also remain in F1 status because you will be registered full-time at SBU and authorized through SEVIS to study abroad. So what are your options for fall as a new or continuing student? And we're going to unpack each one of these a little more as we go through the presentation. So obviously the first option is to arrive on campus and enroll full-time. If that's not possible, you can request to defer your admission to spring 22 or fall 22. You can enroll online and defer your F1 program and arrival to spring 22. You can apply to the SBU Home Abroad program, and this is for undergrads only, or you can request graduate research abroad authorization. Admission deferral for the spring 2022 semester. So if you're an incoming student who's outside of the US and can't enter due to travel restrictions and or visa issues or due to health and safety concerns, you may request to defer your admission to spring 22 or fall 22, and therefore would not be required to enroll in classes for the fall term. Students who elect this option must notify our office of your plans to do so by submitting the US Entry Plan Survey in Access VIS. This form will be available around June 1st. Undergrads who wish to request to defer their admission must also contact International Undergraduate Admissions at enroll@stonybrook.edu. Graduate students who wish to request to defer their admission must contact their respective graduate academic department. If your visa has already been secured, but you need to defer your admission to 2022, we can defer your I-20 so you wouldn't have to go through the visa application process again. So students who wish to defer their program or arrival. So what this means is students who are admitted for fall can defer your program and arrival until spring 2022. This allows you the opportunity to begin your studies at SBU remotely from your home country, while also allowing more time to secure a visa before coming to the US. We recognize their current limitations in online course availability. However, because you're not technically in F1 status, from an immigration standpoint, you're not required to maintain full-time enrollment from abroad. This means that you can begin your studies at SBU in a part-time or full-time standing. Students who elect this option must also notify us of their plans by submitting the US Entry Plan Survey and Access VIS. Similarly, if you have already secured a visa but can't come for the fall semester, we will defer your F1 program. Visa issuance delays. There's obviously a worldwide impact to consulate openings and visa appointment availability. Visa wait times are publicly available, however, don't account for those who are subject to administrative processing. New students who are not able to secure a visa and or arrive to campus for fall will need to take the necessary action to either defer their program or cancel your I-20. So that's why it's so important to communicate your plans to us so that we can advise you and make these necessary actions. Travel. So due to continued unpredictability of COVID-19 impact, we don't recommend those who are currently in the US to travel internationally. Those who leave the US do risk being unable to re-enter the country due to visa delays and or COVID-related travel restrictions. If you plan to travel abroad this summer, we recommend reaching out to your international student advisor for further guidance. So some updates on travel restrictions. As I mentioned, on April 26th, the Department of State expanded the national interest exception for F1 students from all of the above countries. So currently there is travel restrictions currently in place for those physically present in Brazil, China, Iran, Ireland, India, South Africa, the United Kingdom, and the Schengen area. Which means that if you were currently in one of those countries during the last 14 days period, you would not be eligible to enter the US. However, the Department of State expanded the national interest exception to F1s from all of the above countries subject to this ban, which means that if you have a valid F1 visa and intend to begin or continue your academic program on or after August 1st, you do not need to seek an individual national exception to travel. Students who still need to apply for an F1 visa should check the status of visa services at your nearest embassy or consulate. Those who are issued the visa will automatically be considered for the NIE to travel. So essentially, the NIE removes the ban for students who have a valid F1 visa. So some quarantine and vaccine requirements. The proof of a negative COVID test results are still required. The CDC requires airline passengers coming to the US to have a negative COVID test or documentation of recovery from COVID-19, regardless of your vaccine or antibody status. Travelers are required to test with a viral or an antigen test 1 to 3 days before travel and provide the airline with these negative results or documentation of recovery. Vaccinations are not required to, at this time to come to the US or to study at Stony Brook, although we do strongly encourage students to get fully vaccinated at least 2 weeks prior to travel to the US. If you can't access a COVID vaccine where you live, pending availability of supply, New York NSBU will do its best to offer the vaccine upon arrival to campus. As of April 10th, 2020, quarantining upon arrival to the US from either another country, US state, or territory is no longer required. And therefore you can plan to arrive to campus beginning August 15th. So now we're going to dive into some pre-submitted questions, and hopefully these will answer a lot of the questions that you currently have. So one question is, how long will it take for me to secure a visa appointment? So visa wait times are publicly available, however, don't account for students subject to administrative processing. In most cases, students subject to administrative processing will receive a decision from the consulate or embassy within 30 to 60 days. Processing times also don't include the time required to return a passport to the applicant by either the courier service or local mail system. Unfortunately, we're unable to provide specific details on visa wait times and delays for each location, so we recommend that you monitor the embassy or consulate's website where you will apply for updates. How can I prepare for my visa interview? So visa interviews last between 90 seconds and 3 minutes. And in that amount of time, you will be asked what you intend to study, plans after graduation, your ties to your own home country. It's important that you truthfully answer all questions, but avoid offering additional information. Don't forget to bring your original I-20 and all required documentation to your interview. Visa application procedures vary from consulate to consulate, so you'll want to consult the embassy or consulate where you will apply for specific requirements and procedures. And just a little plug here, we are also hosting a webinar tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern regarding the top 10 things you should know about your visa interview from the perspective of a US consulate officer. You can access the link to the Zoom webinar from Access VIS or from the homepage of our website. We'll also have a QR code at the end of this presentation for you to access the link. What documents do I need to renew my visa? So consular officers can now waive in-person interview requirements for people renewing a visa that had expired within the last 48 months. Previously, only those applicants whose non-immigrant visa expired within 24 months were eligible for an interview waiver. This new policy will be in effect through December 31st of 2021, and visa applicants must still meet certain criteria to be eligible for the interview waiver. And waivers are only granted at the discretion of the consular officer. If you need to renew your visa to re-enter the US, it's important to check the website of the embassy or consulate where you plan to apply for your visa for detailed information on what services are currently available, what documentation is required, as well as the eligibility information and instructions to apply for a visa without an interview. What do I do if the embassy keeps postponing or canceling my visa appointment? Unfortunately, you'll have to wait until the embassy or consulate you intend to apply to resume services in order to go through with your visa appointment. We recommend keep checking the website of the consulate where you plan to apply for the latest updates. Depending on your situation, you may be eligible for an emergency visa appointment. At many embassies, if you're a student or exchange visitor and your program will begin within 60 days when no regular appointments are available, you may be eligible. You must show proof of your program start date is within 60 days and you must not have a visa denial within the last 6 months at the embassy or consulate. The website where you will apply will have more detailed information for that location. If a support letter is necessary, we can certainly provide you one. We also recommending requesting a support letter from your academic department if you're a graduate student. Because of COVID, the embassies have shut down and I'm unable to get a visa appointment. What are my options? Is the SBU deferral policy? What is the SBU deferral policy this year? This is a great question. So students unable to arrive for fall 21 can defer your F1 program and arrival to the US till spring 22. This affords you the opportunity to begin your studies remotely from your home country while allowing more time to secure a visa before coming to the US in F1 status. If you're a newly admitted student and don't wish to enroll for fall, you must request to defer your admission to spring 22 or fall 22. As I mentioned in previous slide, if you're an undergrad student and need to defer your admission, you should contact the undergraduate admissions office directly. And our graduate students who wish to request to defer admission should contact their respective graduate departments. In either case, if you wish to elect to defer, you would need to notify VIS by submitting the US entry plan survey and access VIS. Will F1 students who are in the US be able to enroll in more than one online class for the fall semester? So students can continue to count online classes towards full-time course of study. This temporary provision is in effect for the duration of the emergency, regardless of whether you're currently inside the US or outside of the US. As long as you are a full-time enrolled student, SBU will continue to maintain your student status. This means that your SEVP record will remain active as long as you're enrolled full-time and the expiration of your I-20 has not yet expired. But remember, new students entering in initial status, at least 1 3-credit online course is required. I'm sorry, 1 3-credit in-person or hybrid course is required. Can new students do the entire fall 21 semester remotely from their home country on either a full-time or part-time basis? Yes. From an immigration standpoint, new students that are not in F1 status can study remotely from full-time or part-time from outside the US, as F1 status requirements would not apply. It's only students maintaining F1 status must comply with the enrollment requirements. The graduate school, on the other hand, may need an updated offer letter if you're only enrolling part-time for the fall semester, and therefore it's important to discuss your plans with your department. Can students enroll in all online classes from abroad for the fall? Similar to the last question, yes. So continuing active F1 students may enroll in all online classes for the fall 21 semester from the US or from abroad, as long as you maintain full-time enrollment. You'll need to notify your plans by submitting the US entry plan survey after July 1st. New students who are in initial status will not be allowed to enter the US in F1 status if enrolled 100% online for the fall. If you wish to enroll fully online, you must do so from abroad. Can I come to campus for spring 22 if I'm enrolled for fall 21 online from abroad? So continuing F1 students who study remotely from abroad for fall 21 will remain active as long as you maintain full-time enrollment. Those who elect this option are required to notify us of your plans so that we can make a remark on your SEVP record. Can I drop my in-person or hybrid course later once I arrive to the US? So no. In order to maintain your F1 status, you must enroll and complete at least 1 3-credit in-person or hybrid course if you are entering the US for the first time in initial status. How can I show my classes are not online and that I need to be on campus? So we recommend printing a copy of your fall 21 course schedule from Solar as proof of your in-person or hybrid enrollment. Online courses might be hard to match my needs, so I need to take a gap term. What will happen? Will my I-20 and F1 record be invalid? While we hope students will have enough options to study on full-time online, that will likely vary case by case depending on a student's academic program and progress. If you need to take a leave of absence or a gap term due to visa issues or health and safety concerns, your SEVIS record will be terminated for authorized early withdrawal. Termination for this reason should not have any adverse effect on your ability to return in a future semester. Be sure to notify VIS of your plans to take a leave of absence by submitting the Ending My F1 Status request in Access VIS, so that the necessary action can be taken on your record. Given the new travel ban from India, how will SEVP guidance affect Indian students coming or continuing F1 visa? So on April 30th, President Biden signed a proclamation effective May 4th, which is today, which bars the entry of travelers coming from India in a way similar to the previous geographic COVID proclamations. Following this announcement, the Department of State confirmed that students seeking to commence studies in the fall, so on or after August 1st, who provide critical, let me just start over again. Following the announcement, the Department of State confirmed that students seeking to commence studies in the fall, so as I mentioned, on or after August 1st, certain academics, journalists, and individuals who provide critical infrastructure may qualify for the national interest exception. This includes qualified applicants who are present in India, Brazil, China, Iran, and South Africa. This means that students from the countries subject to the geographic ban with a valid F1 visa intending to begin or continue their academic program do not need to seek an individual national interest exception. You will automatically be qualified under the national interest exception to travel. What documents do I need to re-enter the US? Before returning to the US, you should be sure to have all of the following: your most recent F1 Form I-20 endorsed for travel within the last 12 months, a passport valid for at least 6 months beyond the period of your admission, a valid visa if applicable. For undergraduate students, we recommend you have a copy of your Fall 21 course schedule or enrollment verification printed from Solar. Graduate students are also recommended to have a copy of their Fall 21 course schedule or a good standing letter from their academic department. It's important that students traveling internationally are aware that any country can impose travel restrictions at any time, and that these changes may be given in little notice or predictability. So out of caution, we always advise that you closely monitor the CDC and Department of State for travel advisories. Will we have to quarantine for 14 days upon arrival to the US in August? So as of April 10th, 21, asymptomatic travelers entering the US from another country, US state or territory are no longer required to quarantine. Quarantine, consistent with CDC recommendations, is still recommended but not required for all travelers who are not fully vaccinated or have not recovered from laboratory confirmed COVID-19 within the previous 3 months. Symptomatic travelers must immediately self-isolate and contact a healthcare provider to determine if they should seek COVID-19 testing. As I mentioned previously, we do have another webinar tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern on the top 10 things you should know about your F1 visa interview. So this webinar will give you an insider's perspective on how consular officers make decisions on the student visa application, as well as other insights from current immigration attorney and former U.S. consular officer. The link to the Zoom webinar is available currently on our website, on our calendar, as well as within Access VIS under events. As always, there are resources on our website, and we are continuously updating our student FAQ during COVID page. So I recommend that if you do have questions, that you're constantly checking back to this page. And I will turn it over to Trista for one final reminder.
Thank you. So like Meg had mentioned earlier, that we have a couple, 2 more webinars and meetings that are about Stony Brook University that is happening this week. So first is the Study Home Abroad program. So for any of our undergraduate students, if you are interested in learning more about this program, and especially this session is for new students, if you are just starting at Stony Brook University in fall 2021, please consider attending that session to learn more about the options. You can visit them on their website that is listed on the slide there. And also you can use the QR code next to the slide to register for the session. And sessions tomorrow, May 5th at 8:45 in New York time. And also the other one is the visa virtual workshop that Meg already shared with all of you before. And on the right, there is the QR code that you can register and pre-submit your questions for that session. Okay, with that being said, I wanted to remind all the participants that please use the Q&A function of Zoom that probably shows on the bottom of your screen somewhere as Q&A to answer us questions. And we are receiving a very high volume of questions right now. This way it will help us to monitor and make sure that majority of your questions will be answered today. For those of you who are chatting us with your questions, unfortunately, we may not be able to keep on active track of the chats. So please use the Q&A function. With that being said, Meg, are you ready for us to move on to the Q&A part?
Yes.
Lovely. So the first student had a question that what are the current status of traveling outside of US during summer 2021? Are currently enrolled F1 students subject to the 2 weeks quarantine in the 3rd CDC approved countries before entry?
No, currently, as I mentioned, as of April 10th, you're no longer required to quarantine upon arrival to the US. Even if you're from one of the countries who are impacted by the travel restrictions.
Thank you. And the next question we have, does begin the academics program, meaning enter the US after August 1st? I think probably is reflecting to one of your previous guidelines.
Can you just, can you?
The questions about the August 1st deadline. So that would be for students arriving, the travel restrictions are now released for those starting programs after August 1st.
Right.
Okay,
so for those of you from the countries that were subject to the 2-week quarantine in a 3rd country, then that is released, not effective now, but effective after August 1st.
Thank you. And next we have, can we arrive on campus after the program start date and how late that is allowed for immigration perspective?
That's a great question. So for incoming new admitted undergraduate students, you must arrive no later than August 23rd, which is the start date of your F1 program. Graduate students can arrive no later than, I believe it's September 4th. If you are arriving any later than the start date currently issued on your I-20, you do need to request permission for late arrival, as you can only arrive up to 30 days prior to your program start date, but no later than your program start date. So anyone who needs to arrive after August 23rd would need to request authorization.
Thank you, Meg. And again, for that student, I wanted to emphasize that is only for the visa immigration perspective. So based on whether you are a graduate student or undergraduate student, there might be required dates and programs that you might need to complete. Please contact the respective areas to get if there are other deadlines or regulations that you have to follow for other areas. Thank you. Next, so if I receive my visa after the, I think it's very similar to this one, but more in detail. If I receive my visa after the classes start, could I switch from online learning to in-person?
So that would really depend on your academic standing. So undergraduates cannot come after the start of the fall semester. So unfortunately, if you were to secure a visa after August 23rd, we would need to defer your F1 program to spring 22, and you would finish out the fall semester online. Graduate students, we have a little bit more wiggle room, but again, you would not be able to arrive any later than 15 days after the program start date. So I would recommend that you speak with both your department and our office if that ends up being the case.
Thank you, Matt. And also for the students, depends on your graduate student or undergraduate students, some courses availability might be an issue. If you're already registered for in-person classes, if you're trying to switch at the beginning of the semester, that might be difficult. So if you already have anticipated timeline for your visa, please contact your respective advising areas accordingly, so you can have a good schedule for fall 2021. Next, we have, will a deferral be offered to a student who has already deferred from fall 20?
Yes. So if you've already if you've deferred your admission from an immigration standpoint, we can defer your I-20 again. However, you will be required to provide updated financial documentation to be eligible for a new I-20. As far as deferring your admission, if you would need to speak with your respective admitting department. So undergrad admission, as an undergrad student, you would contact undergrad admissions. A graduate student, you would need to speak with your respective admitting academic department to find out if another deferral is possible.
Thank you. Thank you, Meg. The next question we have, I have started spring 2021 remotely from a home country. I haven't secured an F1 visa or for fall 2021 yet. Can I continue my fall 2021 remotely and attend in person in spring 2022 with my F1 visa? And even the student didn't ask that, but I think another question was if they are thinking about attending in person with the visa in spring 2022, when is the earliest they need to apply for their I-20?
Okay, so absolutely. So if you were enrolled remotely for spring 21 and wish to continue to enroll remotely for fall 20, you can, for fall 21, you can absolutely do that. You would just need to notify our office so that we can take the necessary action to either to update your I-20 with the spring 22 start date. We would look at if your financials will end up being more than 1 year old, then we would request updated financials from you. But from an immigration standpoint, you can absolutely continue to enroll remotely for the fall 2021 semester.
Thank you. And the next we have, well, the students who have deferred to fall 2021 from fall 2020 be able to defer again, which is something that Meg already answered earlier. And the question, well, the condition is if the visa cancel is continue to be closed.
Yes, we certainly, as I mentioned, we can certainly defer it will really depend. So if your I-20 was issued for fall 20 and you still have not secured a visa, we will likely cancel your I-20 and reissue it for spring 2022 because new financials would be required at that point. If you have already secured your visa but can't come due to travel or other health and safety concerns, then we can certainly defer your F1 program because you've already secured that visa, because we wouldn't want you to have to go through that visa application process again. So it will really come down to when you originally were issued your I-20 and what your finances look like. But regardless, we can absolutely help you and make sure that you can continue to make progress in your SBU program while from abroad.
Thank you. Meg, the next question is about deadline for deferral. And I think you probably would only be able to answer that from an immigration perspective. So is there a deadline to defer?
Yeah, from an immigration perspective, we ask that you notify us of your plans by the first day of classes and no later than September 4th. Thank
you. And same thing to all students who are have questions about the deferral. There will be other academic related deadlines, so please contact your respective admissions areas accordingly. Thank you. So we're gonna take a quick moment to help us understand what is our current student population right now. So if you can please you are seeing a poll on the screen that asks whether you are a fall new student started from fall 2021, whether you are first year transfer, master level, PhD level, or you are continuing students from various different areas. So if you can please take a moment to respond to us. If we have family or guests, if you wanted to answer based on your student's situation, that would be great. So we can give our panelists a moment to drink a sip of water. Okay, I'm looking at it, it's 50% completed. All right. I can see majority of you have voted. If you would like to continue, there is a screen popped up on your device that asks you to select which one of the following that's most applicable to you. While I'm going to have it wrong a little bit over there, I'm going to read off the next question. So the students having concerns that the US embassy in their country is not issuing visas at the moment. They are now in the process to figure out whether it is possible to pass the interview in some other countries. So they are wondering, what are the deadlines for the decisions on the deferral of admissions and arrival, which is something that Meg had already answered earlier. And in that case, if the student have to defer the arrival, well, that affect their teaching assistantship in any way. So Meg can jump in after I finish that brief answer. So I think the students, it sounds like you might be a master level or PhD level student. Regarding your teaching assistantship, you probably should contact your academic department for the graduate program to get an understanding of their regulations and their deadlines. And for the deadlines that Meg can answer for immigration perspective, I think that's the beginning of the school.
Yes, so if you're requesting to defer either your admission or your F1 program, we ask that you notify us by at least the first day of classes, if not by no later than September 4th.
Thank you. This is actually a very good question. So one of the students asked the question, what's the difference between deferring our admission versus deferring I-20?
Great question. So if you defer your admission, if you're admitted for fall 21 and you wish to defer your admission to spring 22, that means that you do not want to enroll in classes from abroad for fall 21. If you're requesting to defer your arrival or your F1 program, that means that you are going to enroll in classes for fall 21 from abroad and then plan to come to the US for spring 22. So the difference is if you want to enroll in classes or you don't. So deferring your admission would mean that you would not enroll in classes.
Thank you very much. The next question, before we launch the next question, I wanted to share the results with everyone really quick. So it looks like majority of the students attending our webinar today are new master level students.
Great.
Okay. So with that being said, there is a question that students are asking, how does enrolling online for fall 2021 from outside of US affect their possibility to do CPT in summer 2022?
This is a great question. I apologize for not including it in the slides. We do always get this. So if you are admitted for fall 21, but you need to defer your arrival to spring 22, you would not be eligible for CPT until you have completed one full academic year. So this means if you come for spring 2022, you would fulfill spring and then fall. You would not be eligible for CPT until fall 2023. I'm sorry, winter 2023. So you have to fulfill one full academic year unless engagement in internship or practicum is required for your program within the first year. That is the only other loophole that would be, but that's very few programs that require that.
Thank you very much, Lindsay. I think there was a question that asked earlier about regarding the other New York schools that requested officials with a letter to ask to help for F1 students. I think Lindsay had mentioned in the chat that everyone can see it, where that link is, and where you can follow with more information on. Okay.
Question was
So
asking for an update on that. We don't have an update, but you guys can see in the chat the link to the letter that was co-signed by a variety of New York universities, including President McInnes, to Secretary Blinken and Secretary Mayorkas, advocating for international students.
Thank you. So next question that we have, if a student is admitted for fall 2021, can they defer directly to fall 2022 instead of spring 2022?
That would be really up to your admitting office. So as I mentioned previously, grad students, if you're a graduate student are requesting to defer to fall 2022, you should speak with your graduate department directly, and undergrads would request the same from undergrad admissions.
Thank you. So the next question, the student have mentioned that the new I-20 with a valid old visa would work as long as the SEVP number, but okay, sorry, I'm going to read that question again. The student said, I heard that new I-20 with valid old visa works, but however, for the student particular situation, their SEVP number do not match. Would it work for them to re-enter the country?
So it's a risk. So in most cases, we recommend that students who are issued a new initial I-20 apply for a visa that has an annotation that with a SEVP number that matches their I-20. Of course, we have seen students be admitted with a SEVP, with an I-20 that has a SEVP number that does not match their currently valid F1 visa stamp. So it's certainly a risk, but we understand that students are having a very difficult time securing a visa appointment. And so this may be your only option to get to the US. So as long as you're aware of the risks, it's truly up to you.
Thank you very much. So next, I think we actually have got through the majority of the questions. So for the students that if you still have questions, we'll give you 2 more minutes for you to type in your answers in the Q&A session. And I also wanted to remind everyone that we will be sharing a recorded version of this webinar on the websites of Global Affairs as well as the Visa Immigration Service Office website that you will have access to later on after this session is completed. So one of the students would like to confirm that the earliest arrival into the US for full-time in-person student will be August 1st. And after the national interest exemption comes into effect, otherwise they would have to apply for an exception. Is that assumption correct?
If you are from one of the countries that are impacted by the current COVID geographic travel ban, yes, the earliest you can arrive is August 1st. Those not impacted by this, the geographic travel ban can arrive up to 30 days prior to their start date. So that would leave you at about July 22nd, I believe, or July 24th. So yes, if you are impacted by the geographic travel ban and you wish to come before August 1st, you would have to contact your embassy to request an individualized national interest exception.
Thank you very much, Meg. So for some students, if you're asking some, how long, like when we had one student asking how long will the administrative processing last?
Yeah, so I mentioned this in one of our prior slides. Students who are subject to administrative processing typically get an answer within 30 to 60 days, but it really is dependent on the situation and the specific consulate or embassy where you're applying. So while we have students, we see decisions rendered within 30 to 60 days, there are instances that it lasts months. So it really is dependent upon the situation and the embassy.
Great. So next, I'm going to send everyone in the chat a website, which is what we call the Coming Back Safe and Strong website. So many students, if you had questions about arriving to campus, do we need quarantine, and to even continue monitor what is the most updated requirements with the university for vaccine or arrival for new and continuing students, please consider following and save that website and check updates directly with that website. Many of your questions will be answered on that website under their Q&A function, as well as the updates part. So next, let's take a look. So okay, so let's take a look of the questions that are just coming into the live chat now.
Meg, can you confirm, share with them, we have a few questions about India and their concern about arriving in quarantine. So can you reiterate that they are now included in the national interest exception? Can you just review that one more time?
Yes, so on, I believe it was April 30th, those currently in India within the last 14 days were included in the current geographic COVID-19 travel restriction. However, also that day, the Department of State expanded the national interest exception to include those students traveling from India with a valid F1 visa, which means that if you're a student coming to the US to begin or continue your program after August or after August 1st, you would not have to apply for an individualized national interest exception. You'll automatically be granted this to travel. So as long as you have a valid F1 visa. Those who currently don't have an F1 visa, once you do secure one, you'll automatically be granted this national interest exception. And then as I mentioned, as far as like quarantining, you're no longer required to quarantine as of April 10th. Those traveling to the US from another US country or state or territory no longer need to quarantine upon arrival. However, everyone traveling to the US is required to provide a negative COVID test or documentation of recovery from COVID within the last 3 months.
Great. Thank you very much, Meg, and thank you, Lindsay and Kelly, who has been busy answering student questions in our back end. Thank you everyone for your time today, and we are running close to our end time of the session. Again, this webinar will be shared recorded online that for you to view later if you wanted to review some of the slides and information. So thank you everyone for your time. We wish you a successful transition back to Stony Brook University or coming to Stony Brook University in fall 2021. And please follow us our website and with updates that are coming your way later on. Any last words, Lindsay or Megan?
Just remind them what you said. Check the VIS website, stonybrook.edu/visa. There's FAQs and they are actively updated. So they have really good information and it probably answers almost all of the questions that you're asking. So use that information and we will continue to update it as information is available. So make sure you're using the resources available to you. Thanks to everyone. We wish you all the best. We miss seeing you. But here's to hoping we get to see you soon in the fall or at the latest next spring. So thanks everyone.
Bye. Thank you.